Hi again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Loose Wheels, the auto racing podcast of the Kennebec Journal and the Morning Sentinel. I am Travis Barrett. I am the auto racing writer at the Kennebec Journal and the Morning Sentinel. And we've been doing these podcasts for a few weeks now, kind of touching on a few things. We're touching on winners and up-and-coming talent, and certainly some of the bigger names in racing, not just in Maine, but also around northern New England. So we're going to keep the momentum going. Just like a crate motor that is just wound for sound coming through turns 3 and 4, we're going to keep the momentum going as we race for the lead here. But I think you're going to notice a theme on today's show. We are looking at the future of racing in this state, and the future is, well, the future is now. We're going to catch up with Austin Teras. He is the most recent Super Late Model winner over at Oxford Plains Speedway. Talked to him a little bit about adding his name to a list of some of the who's who of racing, not just in Maine, but in the country. People who have raced at Oxford Plains Speedway, people who have won at Oxford Plains Speedway, and Austin is the latest driver to do that. He won their 50-lap feature there last Saturday night. And we're also going to talk to Hayden Norris. He's a West Gardner driver who has won 4 straight 4-cylinder Pro Stock features to start the year at Wiscasset Speedway. His first 4 career wins, all right in a row. We're going to talk to him. He's another second-generation racer. No surprise that these kids, Austin and Hayden, both of whom are just 15 years old. No surprise, given their lineage, that they've had some of the success they've had here early on. But I think in both cases, the success is maybe a little bit earlier than either one of them expected. And I think that's kind of what's neat. You talk to a couple of young drivers, and you don't hear the usual, I knew we'd win. I expect to be the next Jeff Gordon and the next Jimmy Johnson. We didn't hear any of that from either of the guys, and you'll hear it when we talk to them. But I think before we talk too much about the future, I'd like to talk a little bit about the present. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that one of Maine's true racing legends, Mike Rowe, won again. He's a multi-time champion at Oxford Plains Speedway and at Beech Ridge Motor Speedway, and he won at Beech Ridge last week. I think it was their 3rd points race of the year. Mike Rowe, man, that guy, he's well into his 60s, and he still wins races. So congratulations to Mike and the Caruso Fowler racing team. Just tremendous effort. I think every time we see Mike win, we kind of lose track of the fact that we're seeing history just continue to be rewritten. He's won more races than anybody in the history of Oxford Plains Speedway. He's won a bunch of Super Late Model features now at Beech Ridge. And he took over the points lead by winning that race. I know it's still early in the year, but again, I think every time we see Mike win a race, we're seeing more history. But I think we got a really good show here, and I don't want to waste any more time because you don't want to hear me. I know you don't. We're going to start things off with Austin Teras. He's the son of Jay Cushman, and Jay has been he's been around the Maine racing circles for decades. He's still older than I am. I think I should point that out. I think it's only fair. But I think Austin they've run go-karts all over the East Coast. They've run legends both here and as far west as Las Vegas. And this year really kind of have jumped into the Super Late Model over at Oxford Plains Speedway. And, he won in just his 4th or 5th career start there. So we're going to talk to him a little bit about that. We're also going to talk about, he has some interesting thoughts on, and knowing Jay as well as I do about young kids and the next generation of racers and how important Jay feels it is for them to work on their race cars themselves. And Austin's put a lot of time in the shop. He is not a kid who's just been handed I guess you don't really get handed keys to a race car, do you? Right? You get tossed the ignition switch. Can you do that? But I think, Austin's a kid that's kind of had to work for what he's got, and I think he appreciates it. And I think when you hear him talk, you kind of get that from him. Like, it's not lost on him that the work he put in has led to some results on the racetrack. And I think that's really good to hear. I think it's really refreshing to hear. So definitely take a listen. Here's Austin Teras, the most recent winner at Oxford Plains Speedway. 15 years old, goes to Great New Gloucester High School, and he's already a Super Late Model winner at Oxford Plains Speedway. So we're here with Austin Teras. Austin, thank you for agreeing to do the podcast. It's great to have you on.
Thank you for having me on.
You bet. So tell me a little bit about last Saturday night and kind of what you went through to win at Oxford, and also how it feels to finally, I say finally, but at just 15 years old, I think a lot of guys have waited a lot longer to win their first race at Oxford. But kind of take me through Saturday and what it was like for you.
Well, we had some motor problems in the beginning of the year, but we got those figured out, and we unloaded on old tires, and we had some speed. You know, we weren't too far off on the charts. Car felt great, so we put the race tires on, scuffed in, and still pretty good. Went out for the heat race, and we knew we had a fast Jeff Taylor race car, and, you know, the guys worked hard on it all week, so we went out in the heat race, started on the outside pole, and drove right away. Got lucky with the starting position, started on the outside pole for the race.
Yeah.
And just drove. We had a real fast car, stayed up front the whole race, won caution, and a lot of fun.
Did you, was there a point, I guess I always am curious when it comes to races and how they play out. I'm always curious about, when did you feel like you had a car that could win?
Well, right in the beginning, I knew we had a great, real fast race car, because I wasn't pushing it. I was trying to save times for whatever fast cars came from the back to race me, but they didn't get very many cautions, so we stayed up front. The whole race, it felt good, but never really knew if I was going to win it, because there could always be a late race restart with a fast car right behind you, so never counted myself out, but I never said I was going to win it until it was over.
What's it, now that you've done it, what's it like to win a race at Oxford Plains Speedway? I mean, there are very few racetracks, especially in northern New England, that have the kind of history that Oxford Plains has. When you look at guys that have won races and championships there, I mean, you mentioned Jeff Taylor, Mike Rowe. These guys have won a lot of races at Oxford Plains Speedway, and now you get to add your name to that list. How does that feel?
It feels great. I know way back with the Busch Series, they ran there, so there's a lot of big names from, you know, the late 1900s, 1990, all that, 2000. My dad actually had a Busch car that ran there, I think. We have, you know, past races, all the guys from up here. It's great to have my name on that list. Feels great.
Do you feel like, I don't know, do you feel like, did you expect to win so early in the season, or did it kind of take you by surprise a little bit?
Well, again, we knew we had a really fast Jeff Taylor car, but I never really thought that I would win, probably even my first year. But, I mean, we unloaded the first race and we had some speed, so that was like really reassuring and felt great to do, really.
Yeah. So let's rewind a little bit. Tell me about, you know, how you, I mean, I think with your dad involved, how you got involved in racing is not a surprise, but when did you start racing cars? I know you raced a lot of legend stuff, so maybe tell me a little bit, and I think go-karts too, right? I mean, you've done that kind of stuff too, so maybe kind of give me your timeline. When did you get started? I know you've run all over the country, and I think that's something people would definitely like to hear about. So tell me a little bit about kind of your early career.
Well, 2008, I started at Richmond Karting Speedway and ran there for a few years, and we, you know, spaced out. We ran Oxford in the go-karts, and we ran a lot of pavement races in the Northeast, and I think 2012 was when we started going down south, and we ran North Carolina, South Carolina, and then we went to Daytona on the go-karts on the dirt, and we were successful down there, and then 2015 comes around, and we get a legend, and we only run up here a little bit for the first year. In the second year, we went down south. We ran Winter Nationals. We did all that. Ran North Carolina, South Carolina. Then we won that was 2017, so we, hard to remember, but...
Yeah, you're doing a good job.
We ran the Nationals that year. Didn't have that successful of a year. Picked up the first few wins, you know. Then we went into 2017, and we won the NELCAR Championship up here. We won Winter Nationals Championship in Florida. We won at Anderson, South Carolina. We won a lot of races. The Oxford Championship again. And then, October rolls around. We head out to Las Vegas, Nevada with the Legend cars and go for the National Championship. Unfortunately, have an engine problem, so we didn't end up winning it, but we finished second in the championship.
Yeah. Was the plan always for this year to be kind of your first full year at running a full size super late model?
Well, we never really had a schedule. Midway through the year last year, we decided we'd probably step into the super late model. If we did real well, then we'd continue it. But towards the end, we kind of felt like it should be our first full year, and so we decided to run the full season this year with around 10, 15 Legend car races thrown in there.
Yep.
But kind of came out through the year.
So would you? How important is the Legend car stuff to sort of just learning how to drive race cars, and how much of it translates to the super late model? And I guess on the flip side of that coin, how much of what you did in that doesn't translate at all to what you're doing now? And so what are the things there that you're trying to get up to speed with, so to speak?
Well, I guess the Legends are pretty difficult to drive. They have no tire and a lot of horsepower, so they're similar to the super late model on old tires, like at the end of a pass race. But a super late model on fresh tires is a lot, more relaxed, laid back, but it's going on a lot faster around you. You're not turning right and using the throttle, lifting off it halfway down the straightaway. Driving it is hard as a Legend. Plus, you have to save tires, so you can't go all out like you can in the Legend.
Mm.
So, I guess they're similar in some ways, but different in others.
So what if coming into this season? You said that the goal was kind of to run the full season at Oxford and run some Legend races. But if you had said okay, this is a successful year for us at Oxford, coming into the season, what would that have been? Was it just as simple as turn as many laps and get as much seat time as you can, or were your goals a little bit higher than that?
Well, my personal goal was to just take home a trophy for the championship. Somewhere in the top 10 would be nice, but to get our first win this early is certainly a great thing, and we'll have to start a little bit further in the back of the pack for the rest of the year. Maybe, just maybe, get another win. I think
you haven't ruled it out, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Would you? Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you. I mean, have you? But now that you've won, has your goal changed? Like, do you feel like, okay, maybe instead of top 10 in points, we'd like to finish top 5, or we'd like to win X number of races, or is it still, even with a win, is it still too soon in the season to kind of talk about those things?
Yeah, it kind of is too soon to project where you think you'll finish in the points, but our first 2 races we had DNF and a DNS, so that hurt our points championship a lot. We're still, I think, 8th in points, I believe, and I'd love to get a top 5. It's just going to be pretty difficult.
Yeah. What's been in the first, I don't know, however many races it is, 4 or 5 races, what's been the thing that has surprised you most about driving these cars?
Probably just there's a lot of fast cars, and it's pretty difficult to pass. You can't just, in a Legend car, you can drive past some of them, then you have to race the rest.
Yeah.
We almost have to race the whole field in a super.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you, kind of long term, what are your racing goals? Do you have goals for your career where you want to be, I don't know, 5 or 10 years from now?
Well, my personal goal since I was real small was always to win a past championship.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to win that. My father never has. He's come close, but that's something I've always wanted to do, and maybe run a few races above that level. Who knows? Yep.
So I've known your dad for a long time. We've gotten along for a long time, and we've had times where Jay didn't want to look at me, and I don't blame him. But I wonder I remember a conversation he and I had years ago about the next generation of race car drivers and what it was going to take to get kids involved. And I know he's a big believer in you needed to do a lot of work in the shop before you ever got to turn a lap in a race car. And I wonder, how much has that kind of helped you? Has that given you an understanding of the race cars at 15 years old that maybe other 15-year-olds don't have?
Well, I'm not really sure what I have compared to others.
Yeah, maybe that is a tough question for you to answer.
But I know that being in the shop, I'm actually here right now, but working on the race cars every day, you don't just go out on the racetrack and go to the crew chief and say, hey, it doesn't turn. Can you fix that? We talk about it and we discuss changes, and we all have our own opinions and we compromise and go from there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, I want to thank you for agreeing to do this, and I certainly want to congratulate you on a win at Oxford Plains Speedway. I think I get a sense that you kind of understand what it means in Maine racing to have won a feature race at Oxford Plains Speedway, but I would guarantee you that even 10, 20, 30 years from now, you're really going to realize how special it is. So congratulations again, and best of luck the rest of the season.
Hey, thank you for having me on here. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks again to Austin for joining us on Loose Wheels. Make sure for all auto racing coverage throughout the season, centralmaine.com/sports. You can also find more of the podcast episodes there, and also we're on iTunes, so you can if you search Central Maine Sports Podcasts, you'll find it. You'll see the little logo for Loose Wheels, and share it with your friends, tell everybody about it. We'd love to have them along, like the audience to grow. I think I'm happy to keep doing it as long as people keep listening. So that's the best. That's the plainest I can say it. So, but thanks to Austin, and I don't want to spoil Hayden Norris, who's coming up here next on the show. But I think it's really kind of cool that you've got like a high school sophomore in Austin and a high school freshman in Hayden, and they really like. Winning matters to them, and it's really kind of cool. And I think another thing that is a common denominator between the two of them is they both kind of came to it not from just like, you're 13 years old, we're putting you in a full-size stock car, figure it out. Like they've got some racing background that I think it's unique, and it's there's kind of an array of things that they've done, and I think they've got some really cool stories. So I'm really happy that we've been able to get them on, right? We had to pull them out of school and do all that. But no, I think the hardest part, honestly, is that you have to get kids like when they're out of school. So I can't do it in the morning when I'm sipping my coffee. I have to wait. But I'll put in overtime or something for it. I'm sure they'll pay me for it. But TB's Press Box this week, where I like to try and hit on a topic or something that kind of grabs my attention. And this week, I don't know. I feel like I touched on it a little bit with Mike, but I think one thing I would really like to touch on in keeping with the theme of the future of our sport is there's a lot of reasons. You see it on the internet, you see it on social media, people talking about like how to get young people involved, how do we get more young people involved. And I think the biggest thing is, honestly, I think if you look at Austin, and you'll hear from Hayden coming up, they've worked on race cars. And I think having your hands on, I think it still matters. Maybe it makes me sound like an old curmudgeon, but I think if we can find a way to get young people involved, I don't want to put Jay Cushman on the spot, but I remember a couple of years ago, he and I were at Oxford, and we had a discussion about kids and how do we get them. And of course, at the time, Austin was 12 or 13 years old, and Jay's always been like, hey, if any of your friends want to come on down to the shop, help us work on the cars, get your hands on them. And I think you foster a love that way. I mean, you don't learn to love to fish because you watched it on TV, right? You got to do it. You don't learn to love to go camping because your family never took you. You just saw YouTube videos about it. You learn it by doing it. And I think we've got to find a way for people who own teams, who own race cars, to find a way to open those doors to kids in their neighborhoods, in their communities, in their schools. Find a way to get kids invested, right? Because that's the future of your sport. It's the next generation. Mike Rowe, God bless him, can't drive race cars forever. He can't. So we need the next guys, right? We need the next short track stars, the next, pass and ACT drivers. Like, we need those guys to come if we're going to have some long-term health here. And I think getting kids to work on cars, I think, Crazy Horse Racing and Oxford Hills have put together a program over the last couple of years where, they've got kids in the schools working on a team dedicated to working on a single race car, and I feel like it pays dividends. I know at the time the project launched, I was working with Crazy Horse Racing and knew the excitement around it and what was special about it, and I feel like there's an opportunity there, right? And I know I'm not offering a ton of solutions, and I don't own a race car myself, and I can't open my own doors to get kids in there, but I think if we look at the long-term future of our sport, that's the way to go, right? We got to get kids in to, it's not in an app, right? It's not, we're not going to get them on an app. We're going to get them by getting them into shops, getting their hands on race cars, even if it's doing simple things, just having some kind of an investment, right? And seeing that car, and then down the road deciding they want to do it themselves. So that's my press box for this week. I don't know. Again, I don't feel like I got anywhere with it, but at least you let me vent. So thanks for that. It's like my weekly therapy session, really. So I appreciate you listening. Listen, I don't want to talk anymore. I don't. I want you to hear from Hayden Norris, who has won 4 straight 4-cylinder Pro Stock races to open the season over at Wiscasset Speedway. The first 4 wins of his career, at least at Wiscasset. And he's still pretty excited about the first one. I'm gonna steal a little bit of his thunder. He'll talk about it too. But the record in the division over there is 5 straight wins. And so if he wins next week, that will make he'll tie the record. And I think, given the way the first 4 races of the season have gone, I think he's got a shot. But again, Hayden's the son of Gary Norris Jr., who raced at Unity and Wiscasset. He was a super late model / pro stock driver. He raced on the Pass Outlaw series when that was going, and so he's been around it. And Hayden sort of reminded me, I had forgotten about this, but the Norris family kind of backed out of short track racing about the time, Hayden was probably just getting to school, because they were racing motocross and 4-wheelers and all over New England, and really has started to enjoy that as a family. And certainly Hayden was into it, and he's going to talk about it. And it's kind of neat to see it come full circle. I know I said before about these kids have some diverse backgrounds, and certainly Hayden does as well. And so I'm excited for you to get to hear from him. So again, another 15-year-old driver who's winning races on Maine short tracks. He's a freshman at Gardner Area High School, lives in West Gardner. Here's Hayden Norris on this week's Loose Wheels. So we're back. We have with us Hayden Norris. He's 15 years old. He lives in West Gardner. He has won last weekend. He just won his 4th race of the year in a row, 4 to start the season. So Hayden, thanks for joining us. I'm really glad that you're taking a chance to do this.
I'm pretty happy to talk.
That's the spirit. That's the spirit. So I guess tell me a little bit about 4 straight wins. I don't care what division you're running anywhere on any short track in Maine. It's quite an accomplishment. Have you kind of surprised yourself with the start to the season?
Yeah, it's been pretty surprising. From when we started last year to where we ended, it was all pretty rough, and coming to this season and be as strong as we are feels pretty good.
What's been the biggest difference? Is it the same car? Did you get a new car, or is it just the amount of work that you guys kind of put into it?
It's the same car, not much has changed to it. A lot of it has been just my focus, and I watched the YouTube videos from last season way too many times this winter. Learned a lot from them. Learned patience, really.
Yeah. Is it? I want to ask you about, because I was there when you won on opening day, and I remember that you were pretty happy about that. And so then when you win 3 in a row at Wiscasset, I don't know if everybody who's listening knows this. It is mandatory that they tear down the engine and let's make sure it's all on the up and up. Do you, as a racer, is that kind of like, is that like a little boost to your confidence when they're going to do that? Or is that, or more like, really? You guys are going to do this? Like, of course we're legal. I want to know what you feel like as a racer when they say, we're tearing that thing down.
Well, with our motors, it's not as stressful because we, in 2015, they put seals on all our motors with little numbers and stuff.
Yep.
To make sure we're not tampering with them.
Yep.
But it's still pretty stressful because you really don't know what it's going to dyno.
Right. But you never had a doubt, obviously.
No, I've never had it apart. We've had it out once, that's it.
Wow, that's pretty good. So what's been, if you take last year and you look ahead to this season, right, and these first 4 races that you've won, what have you learned about driving the cars? Like, what's the? Are there 1 or 2 things that you're doing differently, or that you've gotten better at?
Well, I've learned a lot of patience since last season. I've paid more attention to how others are racing, waiting for them to make mistakes, not making my own first.
Yep.
Just kind of falling in the groove. I've learned a lot of the momentum with them. It's not as much power as like the bigger cars, like the late models and the pro stock. Mm-hmm. These are 110 horsepower Mazda motors.
Yeah. Would you? How did you get started in racing? Maybe let's rewind a little bit. So what was kind of your first introduction to short track racing?
When I was, I think, about 3 years old, I started helping Dad on his car. He always used to race.
Yep.
I was in the pits. One of my most memorable moments was in the pits, and I was. They found me sleeping in my father's race suit on the trailer floor.
Oh my word!
I was just little. I think I was still in diapers at that point.
Oh my word!
One of the other ones. I always had a headset to listen because I like to listen.
Yeah.
One day, somebody, I don't remember who it was, what was happening, but I guess I came over the radio and just told Dad to just dump him.
Great advice. Great advice. We didn't come here to make friends, Dad. We came here for the big check at the end of the day, right?
Oh, yeah. The money's important.
Yeah, that's right.
At that point, it was the trophy's important.
Right. The trophy's important. That's awesome. So, was last year the first time that you drove a race car of any kind, or had you driven any go-karts or anything?
I started a couple of years ago. Let's bring it back a little further than that.
When go ahead.
I think 5, I started racing motocross.
Wow.
I raced that up in, I think, 2012. The travel just got a little too much for us. So I got a chance to try some go-karts. I wasn't a fan of those.
Mm-hmm.
So about halfway through the season, Scott Tucker, he owns Tucker's Garage out in Winthrop, offered to let me try his mini cup in practice. And I turned a couple good blocks in practice the first time out.
Yep.
I got back in, he wasn't in the suit, and he told me, well, you got a new car. I raced that for the rest of that season, just decent. The year after that, I won the regular championship and came in 3rd in the Triple Crown Series.
Yeah.
Last season, I won both series down at Richmond Karting Speedway.
Wow, all right. Go ahead.
And then, obviously, I started racing the Allison last year, and I think I finished 7th overall in the championship.
So you've kind of taken to these cars. I want to ask you, if you go back a little bit, and maybe you were young enough that it's hard to make the comparison, but going from racing motocross to going to racing stock cars, even the cars that you're in now, what is anything about it the same, or is it really a totally different ballgame?
It's a really different ball game. I guess the motocross helped me grow some little bit of craziness, I'd say. It makes you a little your mentality a little off. I think that's why I might be not as scared to go through as some people are.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm going to assume you feel a lot safer, completely closed in, strapped into a seat, helmet, fire suit, and the whole 9 yards. You probably feel a little safer.
Oh, it's a lot safer. When we were racing four-wheelers and stuff, we had some pretty nasty crashes, pretty bad concussions.
Yeah.
Some close calls.
Any broken bones?
No, I've never broke a bone.
Wow. Maybe you're made out of rubber and we don't know yet.
That'd be nice.
Okay, let me ask you this then. The thing I've always wondered about is the concrete wall though is not a giant dirt pile, and so that to me would always. I've never driven a race car and I don't intend to. I'm pretty sure my wife wouldn't let me at this point, but I just feel like that concrete wall is that's the great equalizer. Like if you're afraid of that, you're not going to succeed at this thing.
No, you really can't be afraid of that. That's like you got to kind of tune it out of your mind. Opening day last season, first practice, first time in the car, I spun it and smoked the wall.
Yeah.
And I realized that it's not something to be scared of.
All right. I'm scared for you. Can I do that? Is that all right? So what's it? Let me ask. So let's look at the rest of this season first. Have your goals changed for this year? I mean, is it the championship now? Obviously, is in sight. I mean, it's a realistic goal based on the first 4 races of the year. Did you come into the year thinking championship, or has that changed for you as this season's gotten going?
My goals originally for the season were to win at least one race and try to be a contender for the championship, yeah.
All right.
And now I just found out last week, listening to the video and stuff, listening to what people have said, the record for wins in my class is 5 in a row.
All right, so no pressure.
That's a little, kind of a little challenge I got going. It's not a big deal to me. Like, it'd be nice to say I have it. My most important thing is good finishes.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the championship.
Let me ask you, so in terms of racing then, 3 years, 5 years down the road, what would you like to be doing?
I'd either like to be, I'm trying to think in the next couple of years, I'd like to be in either a late model or a modified.
Yep.
About 5 years down the line, I'd probably like to be in a pro stock.
All right. Well, I mean, your dad, I remember. Do I ever remember? I remember his days, so it's in the bloodline. So I could see it happening for you. I could see that.
Oh yeah, he's pretty excited about this season as well. I mean, him and I both put in a lot of hours this winter getting the car clean, just make sure everything's okay with it. If you open up the car and stuff, it looks pretty brand new.
Yeah.
Everything got clean, painted, went over. There's really nothing on the car that didn't get touched. I fully rewired the entire car this winter. Wow. I mean, we have some serious hours in it.
Yeah. Well, I noticed one thing, which I'm sure is related, but I think it's your Facebook cover photo on your Facebook page. It looks immaculate. I don't know where you set that up, but it's like there's not a speck of dirt anywhere to be seen around the trophies and the flag and all that kind of stuff. It's amazing. So
that was actually my nephew's first 2-year-old birthday picture. It was in a storage unit.
Oh my word!
Sister had them done,
yeah.
And I saw the picture and I went, "That is perfect for my cover photo on Facebook. Everything is so clean. It's all my stuff. It's perfect."
That's awesome. Oh, that's great. So, I guess I want to ask you, the only other thing I would ask you is, 4 races into this season, what's the most memorable moment you've had, either on the racetrack or outside of it?
Well, for this season, probably the most memorable moment, I'd have to say it's probably the first win, the feeling of the first win.
Yeah.
That felt pretty good. To get that first one, just see how much we struggled last season.
Yeah. We don't have to talk about last season anymore. How's that? Is that a deal? Well, hey, listen, I really want to thank you for taking a few minutes to come on the podcast. It really was a pleasure to talk with you. I wish you the best of luck the rest of the year, man. I feel like 5 in a row is probably, it's definitely a possibility. I'll say that. I'm not really in the prediction game, but I think it could happen.
Me too. I'd say I'd be fun talking.
But you know what? I'll tell a little story here while we're still on the air, right? Your mom had me all worried that you weren't going to say anything, so maybe you need to tell Mom that, you're a real race car driver now. You can do these things.
Yeah, I'm going to learn how to do talking. Really made me a little bit easier talking.
Yeah. Well, I think you did a fine job, and I want to say thanks again, and best of luck the rest of the year.
Thank you.
And his mom was all worried that he wouldn't have anything to say. He's great. The kid's a natural. I think when you win a lot, you get used to talking more, right? I know it was cast at Ken Minot, sticks that microphone in front of your face in victory lane. You got to learn how to talk, man. If you're going to win races, you learn how to talk. And I think Hayden and Austin before him on the episode, they certainly acquitted themselves well. They're great young kids to talk to, great young men who have a bright future in Maine auto racing ahead of them. So we look forward to covering that for sure, and certainly seeing kind of where their seasons go. But I think they're both off to good starts. I think we can all agree to that. And I think it's also interesting to hear how each of them kind of had realistic goals set for themselves this year coming into the year. They weren't talking about championships and double-digit wins. They were really kind of trying to figure out how to become better race car drivers. And I think there's something to be said for their success because I think they went into it with the right approach. But anyway, thanks to Austin Teras, and thanks to Hayden Norris for joining us on Loose Wheels. Again, centralmaine.com/sports. You can find us on Facebook or on Twitter. I'm your host, Travis Barrett. I'm the auto racing writer at the Kennebec Journal and the Morning Sentinel. You can find me on Twitter at TBarrettGWC. Love to have you along for the ride there as well. And thanks for listening. Tell your friends about us, and we'll see you next week on Loose Wheels. Thanks.